Yeah, and I think now we are for sure rolling, as they say.
Yeah, we're rolling.
Okay, so you're Hayley Gene Penner. Nice to meet you.
Hi, you're Eamon McGrath, right?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too for the
Uh,
very first time right now.
yeah, loved your book.
Loved your book.
Um, all right, so should I start with a song? What do you think? All right.
Let's start with a song.
I do want to point out to anyone who's watching that Hayley does have a campfire of sorts going.
I do. I really do. It's over there. So, what do you do when there's a campfire nearby?
You play Kumbaya.
You play Kumbaya.
Here we go. The song's called Vancouver Bound. Goes over and over again. My mind locked in jail and I'm doing time for the things that I did to you and all of the bad things that I put you through. Guess we never got to say goodbye. And I never really told you why. When people come together through suicide, explanations they all run dry. People gotta move on with their lives. People gotta move on with their lives. People get born, grow, then die. Well, I left you on that highway strip, a brand new love crest against my hips. She was begging for me to come her way. There's no way in hell I'd say no to it. People gotta move on with their lives. People gotta move on with their lives. People get born, grow, then die. Blue, blue in this winter wonder. Blue, so blue, the water I going under. You're another ex-lover. People gotta move on with their lives. 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 All right.
Yay!
Thank you very much.
That was beautiful. As I was listening to that, I thought a couple things. One, it's so interesting because I feel like both of our books are sort of about, about different parts of the music industry. And one part that I find so interesting is just like the extreme intimacy that happens so fast, both on the road and in a writing session. And it's like, we just met and now I'm being personally serenaded. I was like, should I turn my camera off or something? Like, well, it's just me and you.
You're right. There is this like, there's such a sense of vulnerability when you open yourself up to someone like that, and you learn things about them so quickly. I think, and in a way that you'd never learn if you sort of took your time with them for granted.
Oh, totally.
That's a really fascinating it concentrates the whole process. Like a friendship that could take 10 years to permeate or ferment or whatever, becomes, it happens in 2 months
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It also, I also thought, because one of the things that your book does so beautifully is like comparing these two tours, and like you get a little bit more successful. It's like the circumstances are better, but like if you haven't handled your shit, it's not going to be necessarily a better tour. It's just like the places get a bit nicer, but you can like,
Yeah.
because I think you were talking about water. You just in the song you just sang about water. There was like a going
Yeah.
under thing, and I was like, no matter how successful the band is, you can drown in either
Yeah.
band.
Well, and there's such a perpetuity to it. Like like whatever you think might be the top at any stage in your career ends up sort of becoming just another bottom.
Yeah,
And I
totally.
mean, not even touring, but like just uh, even just as a songwriter or a recording artist or whatever. Like there's always that that other level to strive and attain to.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, maybe that's that also, like you were talking about how we both wrote these books about the music industry and these,
Mm-hmm.
the toxicity of it,
Yeah.
uh, and that constant feeling of failure is all a part of that sort of toxic machine.
Yeah.
you know
And also that feeling of not being quite there yet. And that like once you get there, things will be better. So to see it from like
yeah,
an 18-year-old perspective, and you're going like, oh, and you're listening to this band. I circled that part where that song is like the song that's playing when you hit the deer. I was like, circle,
right,
circle, circle. Because it's like you have this fantasy of what success is going to look like as an 18-year-old, and you're listening to this band and it's on the radio and it's like, this is amazing.
oh
And then
yeah,
all of a sudden you're with that band, and it's like, it's just as weird, you're just as unhappy, the guy is just as much of a dictator as as the guy in high school.
yeah.
So it's like the next thing, the next thing, the next thing.
And in that scene where your dad, where he comes, like the part with the lemons, where he's like returned from this tour and he's been gone, and there's also that constant realization that you're just kind of this like normal person that does these really normal things.
Yeah.
Normal things happen to you, whereas 2 weeks before you were on a 13-hour flight from
Yeah.
Shanghai, and it was just another day at the office for you. Like that paradox is enough to drive you nuts.
Yeah.
And the constant back and forth is something that I mean that ages you. That
What
ages
is
you.
what is your relationship to touring like now?
Well, I mean, like that song I just played, for example.
Yeah.
That's the. I mean, I did a tour in January, and then I had a show in March. My last show was, I think, March
Oh
13th.
wow.
And that was a song that I used to play probably 250 times a year.
Wow.
That's the first time I've played it this year since January. So I mean,
Wow.
I had to like rewrite the lyrics. I had to remember what the fucking lyrics were, and I
Wow.
like, and I'm sure it's the same with you. It's like there's a part of my life that I just took for granted, and not insofar as like not giving a shit about it anymore, but insofar as like that was just my gig. That was
Yeah.
my day. That was my job, and now it's like it's something that I sort of only exists for me in memory.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's brutal.
But I
I
mean,
was
it's
gonna
weird.
ask.
Like,
Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
well, both of our books also are these. They only exist in memory too. Like we,
Yes.
and I sometimes I wonder if that, especially reading your book, a couple questions came to mind, and it's like, for better or for worse, sometimes I worry that like I worry that I don't know the answer as to like now that I've got all these memories and they exist in this physical way on paper. I don't know if it makes them more or less real to me.
Hmm.
That's the thing that I always kind of struggle with. I don't know what you think
I,
about that. But.
I mean, I think in a sense it does. I don't know. I mean, I also read at the beginning of your book that it was like, this is fictional. This is fictional. And I was like, I was like, is this just to protect those involved, or how much of it is fiction? I imagined it was some amount. Well, I guess you could just answer that question. I don't have to guess for you.
Well, it's a bit
It's a
of
bit of
both.
both. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think like even if you're writing something that's super personal and super autobiographical, there is an amount of just like creativity and like an artistic voice that goes into it that does sort of separate it from the actual event. But also in writing it, or at least for me, like it brought me, it reconnected me with those moments in a way that has like bronzed them, and I already had remembered them so clearly, but now I feel like there's just no way I could ever forget any of them just by writing them down and forcing myself to sit in those moments and recount what they were like, with such detail, you know.
How what was that like for you in the case with especially with the content? Um, was it therapeutic? Like, was it easier to do it than you thought it would be? Was it really tough?
It
Because
was
that's
it
what I
was
mean. What you wrote is an incredibly gutsy, courageous uh, piece, you know.
Thank you.
And
It was super therapeutic. I think the interesting thing, or at least for me in the process, has been people like or friends who reaching out to me, sort of saying, I'm so sorry, or like apologizing to me. Obviously, they didn't do anything, but like a saying, that must have been so hard to go through, or whatever. And I think that is sort of the hard part about these sort of weird toxic environments, is that you don't fully realize just how toxic they are until you leave them and look
exactly,
back.
yeah,
So even some friends being like, oh, that's super messed up, even after I've written them out, even after it's out in the world, I'm still going like, oh, really? You read that as bad? I'm like, oh God, I guess
sure,
that is
yeah.
bad, you know?
But I mean, yeah, it must have been. I mean, it must have been such a relief.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, I can't even imagine. But
Yeah.
and the whole other thing too. It's like when you were kind of mentioning how people were sort of like reaching out to you like that. I mean, it's kind of, especially speaking as a dude, it's like I was. I mean, I had. I mean, obviously those thoughts kind of crossed my mind too, and and I was kind of really not struggling, but like broaching how to like bring this up with you, because it's like the main thing that I kind of took away from it was that like it doesn't really matter how like sorry I feel for you. Like
Right.
that's not the story. That's not the point. Like it's not really about how I feel here.
Right.
Like um and also speaking with like on toxicity, toxic masculinity and everything, I think that's like sort of the most like fundamental uh like nugget of male fragility or whatever, is that it's like especially, not to give any spoilers away for people that may
No,
have,
spoil, spoil.
but like that scene in the abortion clinic, to read that as a guy is so powerful, because it's like I've had conversations with men where they've had this epiphany where they realize that they're completely uninvolved, and
Mm.
that's like the most touching aspect of that to me, is that it's like, well, it's not about you, it's not about you at all, and
Right.
that's nothing to worry about, because it's not you, it's not your thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
So,
true.
I
It's
don't know.
true. And it does sort of feel like an environment yeah, I don't think a lot of men get a chance to like go into. So it must be like, I wish I could read it as a man and just see what it's, what it would be like for the first time. Like it must be interesting or informative or something. But it's like that same sort of excitement of looking behind any curtain,
Mhm.
is like exciting. It was actually another part of your book that I circled, where you were talking about shows starting, and that it's like the audience has no idea how it all came together. It's like, as far as they're concerned, they just had their night and got there, and like stuff is on stage and the show is happening, and then they go home and that's it. It's like
Yeah,
there's no understanding of what has gone into getting a person all the way there, and all the intricacies that are happening behind the scenes, and the fights and all of it that happen before you can enjoy like a show, no matter how many people are in the audience. And in some ways, like the smaller the show, I mean, not even in some ways, in all ways, like the smaller the show, the harder it's been on you, like to get there in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know, I wonder too, as I was reading it, I was like, I wonder if every time somebody talks to you about your book, they want to tell you like the worst thing that's ever happened to them on tour. Like, does that happen to you a lot?
Well, yeah, and I mean, I get asked that question a lot too, and it's like, and it's that's an impossible thing to answer, and it's because it's so uh, complicated. I mean, there's like those shows you're describing, like sometimes like the smallest ones that where uh, they take the most effort to get to, and they and the perspective of the audience, they're maybe worth like the most worthless ones.
Yeah,
Those can actually end up becoming like the most career defining moments. And then
yeah,
a lot of the shows that you play where you're like direct support for one of your favorite bands in
yeah,
in Zurich or something, and it's like this cold dark void
yeah.
room, and then you get out on stage, you do your job, your half hour's over, and then it's like ironically those can be like the least rewarding experiences sometimes.
Oh my
And
gosh,
it's
absolutely.
you know what I mean.
I think too, like because with the small ones, like you have the opportunity to really like you could really, if you wanted to, you could have a deep, meaningful connection with like every audience member. You know,
Yeah, well,
you
yeah.
could you could go out and like have a drink with everybody and talk and connect and leave and feel like you've made a new lifelong friend. And even just the memory and the oddness of a space being so empty is like impactful.
Yeah, and I mean that's we've probably both played shows like that where it's like it's a Monday night in some small town, and you
Oh yeah,
you, you fill the day with a house show or something,
yeah,
and you form like a lifelong connection with the 12 people that watched you
yeah,
in these like really fragile analog moments or something.
yeah.
And like those are I think those are the kind of experiences that are going to happen again first when this shitstorm ends or whatever.
Yeah.
But those are definitely the shows that I miss the most playing, and I think that
Mm,
I miss them the most because like those. I mean, out of all of the shows I played, those were probably the most common ones, which is kind of
yeah.
good.
So in March when you stopped, did you have to like cancel the end of a tour or cut something short or just
Oh yeah,
did it
big
just happen? You did.
big time. Yeah, I mean, it was like I had 2.5 months of shows in Europe booked, and then
Whoa.
a bunch of summer festival offers, and then I rescheduled them to what would have been this time of year, and then I had to cancel that,
Whoa.
and I mean, there's lots of people I know that a friend of mine that books Lee's Palace. She just says that her full-time job is just rescheduling shows now.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
what she does every day.
Wow. And were you touring on your own or with a band?
Yeah, like a bit of both. It depends on the offer I
Yeah.
would get, but yeah, I mean, I did both. I did either or for 10 years.
Wow.
How about what I was going to ask you? What so did you your how did writing a book fit into the
I was gonna
trajectory of
ask you
your
the same
yeah?
question.
Because that's an interesting.
It is. It is. It's I really didn't have like I didn't have a plan to write a book. I wasn't like I didn't sit down on the first day of writing and go like I'm starting the book that I'm writing. I just sort of like was right at the end of getting legally disconnected from the camp that I write about for most of the book. And I just didn't really want to sing about it. I was like, I don't really feel like singing. I don't really feel like songwriting. And I just sort of started writing these bits of things. And my initial response was to just like I wrote one of the stories and then I created like a blog online and just posted it. And a friend of mine was like, "You're stupid. Take that down. Take that down. Don't do that." And then he was like, it's not a blog. Just keep writing and don't share it." Which
Okay.
honestly is like I feel like is the best advice anybody gave me in the process of writing a book because it just keeping it so protected, I think really helped me because I wasn't like, hey, I'm writing a book, so there was no way for me to like let myself down, or like disappoint myself if I didn't reach a certain point by a certain point or accomplish a certain amount by 3 months in or whatever, it was just this sort of like open-ended, whenever this thing that I'm making ends is fine, which is it's just like felt like a super supportive environment.
Do you, and then, so what you were saying before, like about how, you've always got that next step. A lot of people, just writing a book at all is that, did you have that kind of a realization? And like, you were like, did you think that you'd kind of leveled up or something?
I mean, now I didn't really while I was doing it. And I think it is this sort of the joy in doing something that you feel like you have no right to do, like that I'm like a total novice at, because like any amount of people even like being able to read it feels like leveling up, feels like, oh my God, this is miraculous. Like this is an amazing thing. So I think now I sort of feel like, I just feel like have a new love, like I've fallen in love with something new, which I feel like you do sort of constantly as a kid. And it's sort of more and more precious when it happens as an adult, because you just, I don't know, you have less opportunities to do it or something. And I just, I feel like I have a new love that I'm just sort of getting to know in my mid-30s, which is just so exciting. It's like,
I feel like I still have no idea how to actually do it. Like how to actually.
Well, I looked
like,
up
I'm like,
and I was like,
I've got two, and I'm.
I know. I was like, oh, he's written 2
me.
books. Because I was going to ask you, like, oh, what's it been like to put out a book? And then I was like, he's got 2 books.
Well, and I feel exactly the same way about it in a lot of ways that you described. Like it's kind of something that I feel sort of just like I kind of woke up one day and it had happened, And I don't mean, I know that sounds really pretentious and shitty.
No, honestly, I feel the same way.
Yeah, and I guess the sub question to that for you is like, it felt like the way it does when you sort of emerge from like the catatonia of having just written a song,
Yeah.
Like there's just that kind of, or played live or whatever, you kind of like black out and then you wake up and you just kind of got this thing and it's staring at you, from the mirror or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it felt like. And it's just that I think that I didn't really notice all the work that was involved in it and all the work that I put into it while I was doing it. It just kind of like came out of nowhere.
Yeah. And I really feel the same way. That's amazing.
How did you feel like your career changed, if at all?
I mean, I feel like it changed because I'm doing more writing like this, and I feel like it's sort of like a gateway to just other things and more writing that isn't songwriting, and just so in that sense, it's really, I feel like it's just changed the trajectory of my life, and so that's exciting. It's just it's exciting to not know, even now it's exciting to not know all the ways that it is going to influence my future, even just putting something out, because I feel like every time, even with songs, like every time you put out something that's really honest, you're like you're just inviting people in, and so to put out something that feels real, that is super vulnerable and honest, just feels like I'm excited to see where it leads,
Yeah.
Did the two books, like the process of writing both of your books, feel the same? Like that similar sort of like you black out and you wake up and you have a book and like here it is and it's out in the world?
It did, like, yes and no. I think that there was like, I mean, the first one wasn't really what I think you could describe as a novel, whereas the second one is, like I think that there's more of like a linear kind of narrative plot, and there's more characters, and I think the character kind of changes in a more obvious way or whatever. So that was a little different because I think that it took sort of more effort to actually learn the actual mechanics of how to like tell a story as opposed to just publish your meandering. Yeah. So that was interesting. There was definitely a learning curve for that. But I mean, yeah, it's weird because I think that once it happened the first time, I found that people really thought about me. Like it really changed like how I was seen as a songwriter.
Mm-hmm.
and then that was a really profound, like, noticeable thing. Like, it was like I kind of stopped. I really started noticing that it was like I stopped being just seen as like this kind of like sloppy punk rocker, and people sort of took that aspect of what I was doing way more seriously because there was like this, like the Boy Scouts.
Yeah, like proof.
Yeah. And then I think when the second book came out, people took me as a writer more seriously. And
Wow.
that was like the thing that the two sort of moments where I noticed like a significant change in
Yeah,
the relationship between an audience and the performer or whatever.
Yeah, I was going to ask before, but so how has putting out a book now, when you're doing these things sort of Zoomy or digital or whatever, how does it compare to putting out? Because this is the first time I've ever put anything out, and it's in this weird bubble. Like,
Well,
what was it like?
This like if this was last year, like I would not be doing this right now, probably.
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I wouldn't be home. I'd be playing. So that's been kind of weird,
Yeah.
because you have this like you have this kind of old school style career, which was old school already. Like I mean, very few people like go out with a fucking backpack and play 250 shows a year.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Were you doing 250 shows a year?
Yeah, it's a bit of a lost art. Like a lot. I mean,
Wow.
I'm not saying the bands don't tour, but it's like in that.
No, I know what you mean.
Really grassroots, like early 2000s kind of super DIY style. It's a bit of an old school model.
Yeah.
And admittedly, I mean, I know that. And so now it's like I had an old school model that I applied to the promotion of an old school medium, and now it's like I have an old school model that doesn't. It's like the most old school thing you could think about doing, which is touring. I mean, it feels ancient now.
Right. Yeah.
And then in this with this old school, super old school medium where it's like you're trying to sell a book.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's weird, but it's been interesting, and there's like, I mean, I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about like how to actually convince yourself to give a shit about something like Spotify, which is like I never would have cared about before.
Right.
And now it's like you really have to learn and really have to figure all that stuff out, because that's like the bread and butter now.
Are you on TikTok?
Like, I don't even know. I honestly don't even know what that is. I'm
not on it.
I don't. Like, I don't know. And it's not, I mean, I guess I kind of care. I sort of care.
I know.
But I don't care enough to download it. I don't know. I honestly could give two shits. And like,
yeah.
And that's been kind of weird, because it's like, before all I cared about was touring, and that was the way that and it was working. So I didn't have to, I didn't need to know what fucking TikTok was.
Yeah.
So, but now it's a different world.
Yeah, I don't have TikTok either, but I have the same sort of feeling where I do sort of feel like I feel too old. I feel too old to join TikTok for the first time, and like
100%.
I don't want to. Like, there's a deep lack of wanting to, which really has kept me from doing it. But then I do see it being used as a tool, and what a successful tool it is, like what a useful tool it is. But they just haven't matched up yet. Like, me knowing what a useful tool it is and my not wanting to do it, just, they are not yet even.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure it's great. I don't know. I wouldn't even know how to.
I'm sure it is.
Not dissing it. It's just like.
No. It's working great. There's a girl on it. A friend of mine said it to me the other day, being like, this girl has 100 million followers. I was like, I cannot even conceive of the 100.
Well, exactly. And then so say that to yourself, and then talk about, and then compare that with talking about being happy that we played a house show to 15 people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it's two completely different, it's parallel universes. And
they are, yeah.
But I was always really happy with those shows, because if you play a show to 50 people and 12 people to show buy a book, well, then if you do that 200 times a year, that's a good living,
Yeah, totally. I mean, I really feel the same way. I feel the same way even about like Spotify streams and everything, that it's like, especially when you come at something with no expectations at all, like when 100 people when I go onto the Spotify artist app and it's like, 100 people are listening to your songs right now, my mind is blown.
Oh,
My mind
my
is
mind is
blown.
blown when there's like two people listening.
Yes, when
I'm
there's two.
like,
Like,
I am stoked, and
yes.
like, and I mean, yeah, and it's just because you can tell that there's like a tangible connection happening. That's what I give a
Yeah.
fuck about, you
Yeah.
know, and I don't know. I don't think that's very common. I think that's part of the whole old school model is that it's like, well, what do you
Yeah.
want to do playing music? Well, I want to connect with people, and I want, I want someone to feel something good.
Yeah. It's interesting too because especially now, it's like the actual structure of the event is identical whether there's a million people watching or two people watching, which must be
You're right.
very like it's just that's a strange thing to come to terms with it. Like either way, it looks like this. It
Oh
looks
man,
like this just
yeah, totally. I still can't get over like playing a song in front of your laptop
oh
and
yeah.
it feels weird
Because it's weird. It's
because
super
it's
weird.
fucking
It's like
weird.
I'm just in my living room, it's weird. It's just weird.
Yeah. And so that's yeah, I mean all that stuff that's been like a huge adjustment to try and like
Yeah.
um do things that convince yourself and not in like a narcissistic way or whatever, but like to maintain being able to call yourself a working musician when you're not actually
Yeah.
working playing music has been that's been
Yeah, of course.
the biggest challenge because it's like you can like and this goes along like with everything we've been saying. It's like you can put out a book and not tour it, and if a couple people read it, you're still an author.
Yes.
And so
Yeah,
that's a
that's
whole
so
other thing.
true.
It's like now I feel I'm at a point in my life where I feel way more like a writer than I do a musician, which is
Wow.
really weird.
That's
And
really, yeah, especially for somebody who's been doing like 250 shows for the last decade or
yeah,
what it sounds like.
yeah,
Wow. So
and so yeah,
since
it's great.
March, are you writing more? Do you find yourself writing more like songwriting or other?
That's like 85% of what I do as a musician now. It's
Yeah.
just recording. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I I like to think that I'm kind of like packing for the storm or whatever when it can finally all happen again. I'll have a bunch of music to put out,
Yeah.
but I mean like I mean there is a part of you that thinks you have to maybe come to terms with the fact that I might just sort of have to be a writer from now on.
Yeah.
So
How does that sit with you? Is that like a devastating? Is that
yeah, sure.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, it is, but it's like, but it's also it's reality. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, reality is devastating sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean, you get like, I'm thankful for the fact that I can still put out music and people will hear
Of
it, and
course.
I can put out a book that people will read, and I hope they enjoy. And it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, we're still working. It's not like it's
Yeah.
another thing that's been weird about it all has been like, and I'm sure you've noticed this too, is that it's like, and I think you might have mentioned this earlier. It's like all the administrative aspects of it look completely the same.
Yeah.
Like this is going to get recorded. I'll probably post about it.
Yeah.
It's like we're working right now.
Yeah.
But the payoff of playing in front of people every single night, that whole aspect of it, that whole aspect of it's vanished. And so it's weird to put all this work into things that before you only really thought, like, let's face it, we're worth it because of attendance, right? Like, why
Yeah.
do 10 interviews for a show if like you're not going to get 80 people to it?
Yeah, of course.
And now you do those interviews and there's just no.
It's so interesting. It
Yeah.
is like I felt super nostalgic reading your book because it like just those memories of I think there is like an amount of just self-preservation of like just not even like shoving down memories of like group activities or tour or whatever, but I do think I've sort of like put them in another room where I'm like, okay, those will be back at some time, but not really engaging with them in like a, oh, I miss that sort of way. And then reading your book, I really felt, this is why I was wondering if people all come to you with their like favorite touring stories or worst touring stories after having read your book, because I was just like flooded with all of these memories of touring and groups and like being in a van or being in a bus or being in a group or having like, I toured with do you know who Lindy is? He's a Toronto musician, super
Yeah,
tall
actually.
Icelandic guy.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's amazing. So I opened for him when I was like, I must have been 20 or something in the UK, and it really feels like my first, if not my only, tour of that structure, where it was like me, his wife at the time, and him in a car in the UK. And we did one show at like a bar, this crazy bar, and they didn't have a mic stand for me. So they duct taped a mic
yeah,
to the top of a fan, like an actual, they took the head off the fan
sure. Yeah,
and
yeah,
just
yeah.
duct tape. And I was like, and I just started remembering all these like weird, but they're amazing. Like those are the things that
Yeah.
stick. And especially now, those are the things you miss. Where I'm like, I miss singing to like 30 hammered men in a mic at the top of a fan, and like, just it's beautiful.
It's totally beautiful. And it's like, and like you mentioned before, it's like, that would be something that certain people, especially people that I know personally, would be like obsessed with, like aspiring away from.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
like I totally agree with you. Those are the kind of moments that define your career. Like,
yeah,
not being annoyed by that says a lot about an artist. And
yeah,
it's like I've totally been there. I've had thousands of those experiences. Like that was my life. And
wow,
I loved it. I reveled in it.
yeah.
Like I miss playing a squat in Ljubljana that smells like dog piss, man. I
Yeah.
can't wait.
Yeah. It also
And
really is just such character building. Like you can't not get tougher, and your chops can't get more sharpened, not get more. You get it. Like it's
well,
character
yeah,
building to
yeah.
do those kinds of shows.
And it's also a daily reminder of how much you love something, which
Yeah.
is something that is something that I really miss too. It's like being constantly reminded of how much you're willing to put into something that you care so much
Yeah.
about.
Honestly, I think about that a lot in LA too, and even just songwriting with people where it's like it almost does sort of feel like I'm going to say this and I'm not sure if I believe it yet, but sometimes I have to say something and then I'll know if
Yeah,
I
yeah,
believe
yeah,
it.
sure.
Where it,
Yeah,
it,
I
it
got
does sort of seem to be like the tell of like a true artist musician is like, would you do it if it wasn't comfy? Like, would you keep
yeah,
doing it if it sucked? You know, because a lot of people,
100%.
and I think at a certain point you would go no, like, and even for me at this point, I'm not going on a car tour, no way. But I
Right.
know so many people who would be so thrilled. So I guess I just called myself not a real musician, but you get it, you get it.
Well, it's
It is
like
like it's a teller.
it is a teller. Yeah, and it also kind of changes for you when it's like life or death, right?
Yeah,
Like if that's your job,
yeah,
uh, you'll put up with a lot more shit.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Whereas it's like I think a lot of bands like they pack it in because um, they can't make a buck for so long,
yeah. Of course, of course, of
and
course.
uh, and that's like I mean that's yeah I mean that's not easy. I'd also think like on the subject of toxicity, it's like that um, exacerbates character traits that are probably not uh, worth celebrating in people and brings out the worst in them.
Oh
Which is
yeah,
which is which is so unfortunate, but yeah, it's true. It's true.
yeah,
I mean, like yeah, both of our books, like we both talk about, um, yeah, like these really really awful toxic people, and then but the way that toxicity is inflicted on
mm-hmm.
the narrator is obviously so drastically different. But I mean, there's like in where like all of the reprehensible things that Tal does in the book. Like I can see some characters in my book doing those same things, but
Yeah.
hiding it from their male counterparts in a band.
Yeah, exactly. We just don't see that behavior.
Yeah.
But it's like the same sort of characteristics. That's very interesting.
I've known lots of people where, you know, I was someone that those aspects of their character were like, they were hidden from me.
Mm.
And I've always kind of wondered how you could possibly not notice something like that, but it is possible, and these people are really good at keeping it a secret, right?
Yeah, and
which
also
blows
I think
my mind.
It's mind blowing, and also I think it's sort of, it's like when you know, if one of the guys, like especially the guy in the second band, I think he's the second band, who is just like has like such a ridiculous god complex, and it's like, you, if somebody asked you to give sort of like a character read on him, it wouldn't be glowing. Like it wouldn't, it would have a bunch of holes in it. So
Sure.
it's like, even though we don't know, like you want to believe that a person isn't like capable of the worst, but everybody sort of has little tells. Also, you're like, oh, but I could see that guy doing that, you know?
100%. And then it's so strange how that's always mentioned in hindsight, whereas it's like,
yeah,
regardless of how predatorial whatever someone is behind the scenes, like you wonder why you'd want to even just put up with someone who's just a fucking asshole.
Yeah, exactly. And it is,
Like,
it's, I really related to so many parts of the book too, where it's like, it is this idea that it's like for your career, and it's like you're doing the right thing to advance your career, but it's like, where are you even going? Like if that second tour is your tour advancement, it's like, what's next, and what are you going to have to do to get to the next chapter, you know?
well, and there's that one scene in People You Follow where it's like you're kind of like coming clean with the guy's colleague, with Tal's colleague.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I don't really deal with his personal things.
Yeah.
And it's like that's been like, I've had that conversation with people, you know.
Wow.
That's like, and I've always wondered how you can, like, maybe that's like the careerist defense mechanism or something. It's like, oh, well, like that person doesn't want to go deep into his character because they know that, or maybe they feel in this twisted sense that they feel that it'll be like a form of self-sabotage or something.
Yeah, I do think that's what it is. Like I feel very I watched I don't know if you've seen it like bubbling around Instagram today, but this like Dave Chappelle
oh man, that was so moving.
It's
blew my
so
mind.
moving. It blew my mind. I mean, he's just a genius, but I just thought of it now because it is sort of, it reminded me of that like never come between a man and his meal thing he said.
100%.
Because that's really what that moment is. That him going like, please don't, I don't want to look at that, is so that he can feed his family. You know,
Yeah.
It's like he just doesn't want to look at it, doesn't want to engage, because this is the way he makes his living. And it's just, it doesn't benefit him and the life he's built to acknowledge that the partner that's making him a shit ton of money is like responsible for all this garbage.
Well, and it's like, and I'm not saying I'm on a any kind of high horse here or whatever, but it's like, I would rather play a show to 15 people a night, you know,
Yeah.
and make a modest living and do what I love than chase down these aspirations that in turn render me blind and complicit to that
Yeah.
kind of behavior.
Yeah.
And that's something that's like an inherent like problem with the music industry, I think, is that it's like that toxicity gets bred and it grows like a cancer because people
Yeah.
are desperate and broke, and then those people turn a blind eye to behavior that should be
Oh yeah.
like completely, you know.
Yeah,
not allowed.
and it's especially bizarre too, just in with the camp that I was in, because they got this they got this freak hit. So all of a sudden you're like used to working and used to doing the grind, and then all of a sudden you have a song that has 1 billion streams or something. So
Right.
now it's like, now you're obsessed with keeping that and getting another that's going to be as successful or more successful. So it
Yeah.
just like breaks a person. It like
Spirals.
breaks brain. You just spiral. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Well, is now, you want to play a song? Is that a good
Yeah.
time?
yeah, I'll play a song. I'll play a song. We both put out albums this year. I listened to yours today while I made French toast this morning. It's beautiful.
Oh, right on. Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of your stuff too. It's been awesome.
Thanks. This song is called Sleep at Night, and it is about me hypothetically telling Tal's wife everything that happened in our little affair. Not so little, but our affair. You can walk away from all this, or you can let me show you around the wreckage. Some of this is harder to admit or talk about, but I am trying. Giving in is harder to resist, feeling like a boat without an anchor. Stolen silent kisses feel like quiet promises that I'll be fine. And I'm trying to pull away from this bed, but it hasn't happened yet. And I lie when I say I'll never go back, 'cause it hasn't worked like that. So hate me if you want to, you can blame me if it helps you. Breaking up your family while the siren wakes the baby, it's alright. Whatever helps you sleep at night. Whatever helps you sleep at night. And I'm not sure you were taking this, playing with a tiny piece of paper. Scared to see my lying eyes are the only eyes not telling lies now. And I've got my reasons for the mess, but none of them will save you from your madness. 'Cause he was in my body while his words were in your hands, somewhere across the ocean, trusting him. And I'm trying to pull away from this bed, but it hasn't happened yet. And I lie when I say I'll never go back, 'cause it hasn't worked like that. So hate me if you want to, you can blame me if it helps you. Breaking up your family while the siren wakes the baby, it's alright. Whatever helps you sleep at night. Whatever helps you sleep at night. Thank you, thank you.
I'm reminded of how great it feels to just sit in an audience.
It does feel nice. It feels nice because it's like you don't have to do anything else. It's so low pressure. You just have to sit and receive. It's so nice.
Yeah. Cool.
It really is nice.
I was going to ask one thing too, and I kind of forgot to earlier. What was like? How hard was it? Was it a conscious decision? Like you use your own name in your book, and I kind of really respect that about it. I don't know if I was maybe just too much of a pansy ass to use mine, but I that really blew me away that you didn't create a character.
I think it would have been hard because I was using my dad. Like, because I was using my dad's name. And that's actually not the reason why. Like, the reason why really is because I was just trying. I think it would have separated me from being able to tell the truth. And it was just like the whole experiment of trying to write a book was like, let's be as brutally honest with myself and the people in my life as possible. And I think because it was sort of in response to living in such a lie for so long, it was like all I wanted was to have it be as honest, as open, as like, this is me, this is what happened, as could possibly like even the scales a bit, because it had been such a lie for so long. But yeah, I think just also because I was using my dad, it was like it couldn't be Fred Penner and his daughter Elizabeth Ann, you know.
Right.
I'd have
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
like, meh,
Interesting.
you know. So there was the only even when before it came out, and I never actually had to worry about it, like getting people to sign releases or anything, but it was the one part I can't remember that whether it was publisher or my agent who was like, just to prepare you, you may have to get your family to sign releases because they were the only people whose identities couldn't be like they couldn't deny that it was them because I
Yeah.
was using my name,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So tricky stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, I remember when I published my first book, and I when I wrote it out initially, I was just, because it was natural, I was just using people's names. And
Yeah.
my editor was like, you really can't do that.
Yeah.
And I remember I was like, oh, well, it's the legal thing. But then it also, I realized that the suggestion was actually like such a good artistic one, because it like forced you to remove yourself from the actual person, and in a way like adjust reality to suit the narrative, you know. And I think in a lot of ways, like me not being so connected to reality ended up making the characters in the book better, and they're not necessarily who they actually were, but I think that in the context of the actual books, it was like, I'm pretty happy I did it, like legal stuff aside.
I can imagine it freeing you up a lot too, like because then you're not necessarily so tied to what exactly happened, you know, because I was using my actual name, like it all exactly happened, because I wouldn't have felt okay about putting any sort of like fictional things into it when I was using my real name, because it almost felt like it'd be like a false testimony or something, you know. So in the way that if I had named myself something else, I could sort of shape it in a more narrative way, just to serve the story, you know.
Well, and it's also you put like the content of your book is so like the nature of what you're confessing is like so hardcore that it would also sort of, you kind of want to like, you don't want to do the severity is the wrong word, but you know what I mean, like the impact of what it is you're saying is like, I can imagine like not wanting to do that in justice, I suppose, because it is such a truthful thing to come public with. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it. I was going to ask you something else, and then I was just hearing nice things you were saying, and then I got distracted. I was going to ask you. So, when you wrote the first book, did you already have like an agent, publisher? Like,
No.
how did you find them? How did you get them?
I was like totally prepared and satisfied and excited about the idea of just like having a self-published chapbook at the merch booth. Like I didn't give two fucks about any of that other stuff. Amazing. And then I asked some friends of mine, like who are published writers, just not for advice on like where to take it, but like for advice on how to make the writing better.
Yeah.
And pretty much overnight, it seemed like it was overnight. Like within 2 weeks, I had a meeting with ECW and I was signing a deal.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm like, I know that's not normal, and I still can't believe that happened that way.
Wow.
But it also that also adds to that whole like the catatonic kind of nature of the experience of all of it.
Yeah,
like, you know, so.
Wow. So they put out the first book too. So this is your second book with them. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's been a really great ride.
Is your book available right now?
Yeah, so I think we do have to plug. We do have to do the plug.
We're going to do a plug farewell.
Okay. So yeah, this is Here Goes Nothing.
Beautiful cover. Who did the cover?
September.
Who did the artwork?
The person's name.
The person at the place.
Is on the tip of my tongue. They were amazing. There was a couple options that were also incredible, but this particular illustrator really Shit, I can't remember them.
Sorry, I gave you a toughie right at the end.
I should totally have it on my tip of my tongue. But it's funny because their Instagram handle. I actually do. I know people by their Instagram.
Look what I've done. We'll tag it.
Yeah, I'll tag it in all further posting here. But what about you?
Yes, I too. It exists out in the world. There it is with my little things on it. This is my copy. People you follow. It's out wherever you get books. Wherever books are, you can go get it. Go get it and have all the stuff we just talked about in a clear context. Thank you so much for talking to me, Eamon. I had such a good time.
Yeah, thank you so much too. And I really, really enjoyed your writing. It was fantastic and great song.
Thank you. It was so nice to talk to you. I really enjoyed yours.
And yes, I will tag all applicable tags.
Tag all the tags.
Tag all the tags.
Tag all the tags. Live well, prosper. I can't wait to see you in a real audience someday.
Yeah, soon. Sooner rather than later.
Someday soon.
Okay, take it easy.